I want to call my panelists one by one. I will have a short intro for each of them. We will have them seated. Give me a sec. Okay. So one of the panelists is a representative from Dispatcher. His name is Todd Malone. He's from the Emergency Communication Center, where he is. His current role is Quality Assurance Specialist. He brings over 12 years of experience in public safety. He's a reserve deputy with the Scott County Sheriff's Office. And may I have you here? Yeah, the first one, please. And then next, we have Darien Gold from Moline Police Department. He's a chief of police of the city of Moline. He has been a police officer for 23 years and was most recently as an assistant chief in East Moline. Chief Gault served in numerous positions while in the East Moline Police Department, including patrol officer, detective, special federal officer assigned to the FBI, Quasi's Federal Gang Task Unit, and first detective, sergeant, lieutenant, and so it's a long list here. So he's going to be here to represent police departments. And thank you for coming here. And we have Travis Noyd from Fire Department. And I'm trying to find my notes. I might not have it, but he's been working with the Moline Fire Department for years. He's an EMS chief of the department, right? And he's going to be representing fire and EMS and talk about what they are doing. Please. So we have Jessica Heinz, right? She's an EMS paramedic. She's been doing this job for 8 years, and she's an EMS for 8 years and paramedic for 4 years. She's married, and her husband also is a paramedic, and she has 5 kids ranging from 15 years old and 1 year old, and he's representing the ambulance force and coming from Genesis Ambulance. Please have a seat. And finally, we have Angela Seegrist from Emergency Department East Campus. She is a supervisor there. Actually, she's a graduate alumni from Lookout College in 2002. And she has been a nurse manager of Genesis Behavioral Health, and now she's supervisor of the Emergency Care Center, Trauma Center, Genesis East Russian Campus. Welcome. All right, so this is the panel, and so we often have no idea what is this about, this definition and terminology. Maybe sometimes confusing when they say first responders, who are they, what they do, what agencies are included. It's a confusion for some time, but we will try to make it more clear over the conversation. First responders, someone whose job is to respond immediately when there is an accident or emergency. Basic definition for it. So dispatchers, EMS, paramedic, firefighters, police officers are defined as first responders, as a legal term. But when we putting aside these legal terms, include the prevention, preparation, and recovery stages connected with emergencies, the number of agencies and actors getting more. So it's hundreds of different agencies are being working with the capacity of first responding behind the scene. We know them like fire, police, dispatcher, paramedic, but there are more people are serving for the same capacity to protect the community from any kind of emergency. It is something that we should mention and tell when we start. And the page that we will be setting for the career opportunities will try to include as many as agencies on the list, so you can, the students and other visitors of the page will be able to understand what agencies are working with that capacity. So one of the reason and motivation that why we as a Blackout College to organize this event, to make this as a tradition, first of all, of Blackout, and to learn about what all these services about. And being a community college in our region, we want to have a responsibility to be part of this educational effort to make this next generation, future first responders ready for coming years. And as I mentioned, because of COVID, we couldn't have a job fair, but hopefully starting from next year, we want to have a platform that all agencies come here. We invite all students from K-12 and high schools and higher education, adult education, get together, appreciate each other, and learn more about what's there. And I want to stop here and start have like a scenario to make it more understandable in the eyes of like listener. And imagine that we have an emergency, all right? And the first thing that we will do to do something. Who wants to say what you do if you face an emergency? What's the first thing you might do? It's a car accident or crime. Call, yeah. We all right. The number that we know is 911. So everything starts with that. So what we're going to be doing here, when we set up like this, we start with the 911 dispatching, police, fire, paramedic, and emergency room. So we will have like a scenario and journey from beginning to the end as an intro of the panel. The panel will continue with questions. I collected questions from participants over a month. They submitted a couple of questions, and I tried to collect them, categorize them, and pick the most important ones that I will be asking on behalf of you. But at the same time, you guys, after the panel, you feel free to ask anything that we haven't answered in this panel. We will have a scenario, then that scenario continue with question answer by me, and we have an interesting format, the Google questions. If you haven't seen this before, it's a fun format from YouTube. We're going to end this panel with Google format for major agencies. And the second half, and short half of the panel will have family and beyond section. So what we want to have, we want to listen people from the family perspective, because they're not only first responders, and also as Dr. Mgmt was telling, it's the family. We have two families. We want to hear from the other side. And retired police chief Victor and Heather as a family member will be here shortly to talk about that perspective. And that's the end of panel. After the panel, we will have an award ceremony and thank you messages and videos. That's the program. If you like it, so you can stay. Just kidding. So I want to stop talking now and start with Todd telling you got a call. And there was this agency all over the United States serving their capacity. What do you do? And how it is important. And if you can give us like 2-3 minutes informative talk about the role and responsibility of the dispatching agency, that would be awesome.
Sure. First of all, I'd like to thank everybody for being here, as well as the other first responders up here. Like you said, my name is Todd Malone with the Scott Emergency Communications Center over in Davenport. We are the largest consolidated dispatch center in the state of Iowa, so we're very fortunate to have a nice facility. A little bit about our agency. Can everybody hear me okay? A little bit about our agency is we have 7 management members, which I am a part of, 6 dispatch supervisors. We currently have about 40 full-time dispatchers with 3 in training. So we're a fairly large agency. We process about 225,000 calls per service per year, including police and fire. A unique situation for us is we are co-located with Medic EMS. So they provide all of our EMD and instructions for any medical. And we take care of any of the emergency fire dispatch, providing instructions for getting out of a burning house, sinking vehicle, stuff like that, any emergencies that, we may come across. Every time we answer the phone, it's a different opportunity. We don't know what's going to be on the phone. Our dispatchers work 12-hour days, like they said, lots of overtime. They're not there with their families, just to serve our community. We hear gunshots on the phone. We hear, the worst people are having the worst days. So it's a very stressful job. We all deal differently with stress and how we handle that. But, a typical 911 call when we receive, we want to verify the location, make sure we're sending the people to the right place. We want to gather the phone number in case there's issues with getting somebody, if we lose connection with them. There's some calls that we get open lines and we have to determine, based on background noise. We're checking phone numbers. We're checking the history of the address. We're doing all this stuff behind the scenes. We are the eyes and ears, and we have to paint that picture for the responders going to the scene. So, fortunately in the state of Iowa, we are now recognized last year as a first responder. Prior to that, we were just recognized as a clerical worker. So we made big progress on that, but that's pretty much the majority of what we do.
Yeah, it's the thing that I mentioned, like from legal perspective, definition might be different, but for the first responder capacity, there are lots of agencies and individuals are working to save the community. Thank you for the intro, Todd. So there is an army of dispatchers everywhere in the United States. They're going to be picking up the phone and answer your inquiries and try to help you as much as possible. And we will be asking questions more in the coming out. But after that, once you get the call from a scene, an accident, you let the people know, other agencies. You call police, you call fire, you call ambulance, and then they are taking the role. So we have around 550,000 police officers in state and local agencies, and around 300,000 sheriff officers are working to serve the safety, protect the community and help people to save from the emergencies. And then you let the Moline Police Department know about the incidents. So it's one of the agencies, among others, in our region. And why don't you tell about what you guys are doing? What would you do when you get a call? And what's your responsibilities as an agency?
Sure. Well, Dr. Onder, thank you for putting this together and having me here to represent law enforcement. I think what we need to point out here is that this is a team. And so from the onset of a phone call all the way down this line, I think you'll find that we're acting as a team to try to solve whatever crisis that is before us. I'm the police chief for the Moline Police Department. We have 81 sworn officers that serve our community in law enforcement. We handle about 60,000 incidents a year. 14,000 of those are 911 calls. So we handle several 911 calls a day. You never know what those calls are going to be. And I think that what you heard from the dispatch center is a typical response of they're gathering information from a caller. And then what we rely on them for is to relay that information in a summary, right? Someone has called them and given them a bunch of information. They're gathering that and relaying it to the next team members that need to respond. So they're an important part of this puzzle for us to know what to do. So just to give you a little bit more expansion on your scenario, if outside Blackhawk College, say down here at say 60th Street and John Deere Road, that accident is reported, the multi-vehicle accident, maybe a rollover, I think there's people that are injured, law enforcement is going to respond. And the police department has the city, and all cities do the same thing, is they divide the city up into beats, and that officer is responsible for patrolling a beat. So likely, unless that person is busy, that beat officer is going to be the first and closest person to respond. That's one reason that we have officers out in those beats, is to improve the response time. And you'll probably hear the same thing from the fire department. They've got stations out into those quadrants so that we can get people there quicker. So the police officer is mobile in a squad car and is going to that accident scene in this scenario. And what our job is always life safety, right? Our first responders that get there are trying to determine if those human lives need to be saved in some capacity. So whether we can provide emergency medical, first aid right there on the scene that might help someone down the line in our team save a life. Maybe it's apply a tourniquet or stop bleeding or do CPR or something to get them down the line ultimately to medical care. That is something we're going to do right away. But then also our job is to protect other people. So there's still going to be motorists going by this accident scene. There's still going to be other first responders like fire and EMS are going to need to respond, protecting that scene so that the scene doesn't get worse. And so some of the things that we need from dispatch is, where is that location? What are you hearing? How many people are injured? How many cars are involved? We're then using radio systems to coordinate with other police officers to respond to control traffic. So at an intersection, we maybe need to either shut the whole intersection down, or we need to maybe block traffic in a certain area, getting police cars set up with lights to alert the public that there's a problem, to avoid the area and divert traffic, or potentially allow traffic to continue so that other people can go about their day and not be bothered by this moment in time that we're dealing with, to keep traffic flowing safely, getting fire and EMS into the scene safely, protecting their equipment, protecting their workspace, because as we transition this down, that becomes their office. And they're having to do work in that space out on a roadway to either save a life or get someone out of a vehicle or put a fire out. And so we need to make that workspace safe. We use equipment, police officers, traffic cones, other equipment, flashlights or wands to try to get people around that safely. So there's a lot going on there. And I think the interesting thing for you maybe to take away from that, not to be overwhelmed, is that every one of these is different. And it's like a little mini puzzle that you get to solve every time. And really none of them are the same. And so, every day is different. Every day is exciting. Every day is interesting. And you get to apply your problem solving skills on dozens and dozens of calls a day or thousands a year to try to help the public. And so as we get there, get that scene safe, and usually what I tell my staff is, we're trying to slow it down. What can we do to slow this down to allow the next person to be safe in there and do their job? And so at that point, the car is on fire or there's someone trapped or needs medical assistance. We're making that scene safe and passing it on to our next partners.
Yeah, you're right. The emergency by itself may be one single emergency, but as the chief mentioned here, sometimes there is this emergency is expanding, is getting more, or causing more situations that create more emergencies. So prevention phase before the emergencies is an ongoing process and service is increasing during a significant emergency. So we don't want other accidents, other fires, other criminal activities connected with the same activity, right? So there's one, for example, a crazy guy is doing a fight, and the fight can be a huge fight, right? So prevention together with responding is another important aspect that we have to know and realize how it is important to stop something when it starts and do respond as quick as possible and do what needs to be done. So sometimes that incident may require some additional effort from fire department or health-related issues. So for that purposes, in the United States, we have over 1 million firefighters, and 75% of them are volunteer, serving for that capacity. They're trained, they have equipments, and they are going to be showing up there in the moment when they get the call. So Travis will tell about what they do as a firefighter department and what's the responsibilities and roles that we are filling that scenario.
Thank you, Hunter, for having us again and doing this. This is really a neat perspective, a chance to speak to prospective employee, prospective future employees or people that want to do this job. So just to add on to what Chief Gault said and what Todd started with, we are much like a piece of a puzzle. So, the puzzle starts at dispatch and then it moves on to either police or fire, or we can be sent both out simultaneously. Chief Gault was correct. Typically, police is the first on scene, unless we're out at the grocery store or something, and we might.
Well, our cars are faster.
Yeah. So
You got to carry all that water. Slows you down.
Slows us down. So, but no, they are usually the first people to get eyes on the scene. So if it's a car accident, they are going to relay it back to the dispatch that, hey, squad whatever 161 or whatever number they are that day said, I got a 2-car accident. I've got multiple patients, and then they relay that to dispatch. Dispatch sends that back to us. So when Todd says dispatch is busy, they are very busy. They're taking, they got just for one incident, they might have to have 2 or 3 dispatchers just handling all of that. So they're taking in information, they're recording all that information, because once the call is completed, we can go back and review the notes. We can go back and listen to the recorded messages that were sent. We do that for every fire we have. We have our critiques, and we go back and dispatch records everything, and we're able to go back and listen and kind of discuss the tactics that were used. And so they're very valuable. If you don't think that the dispatchers don't have a valuable job, you're sorely mistaken. So back on to just a little bit about the department. Like Chief Gault said, they have beats for the fire department or for the police department. For us, we have our stations strategically placed throughout the city of Moline. We have 4 fire stations, and in those fire stations, each station has what we call either an engine or a truck. Now, I don't want to get into the whole difference of what an engine and a truck is, but we have 4 vehicles that carry water and hose and are able to start an initial fire attack if that's what you need. On those engines, we have a minimum of 3 people that ride on those vehicles. We have an engineer, we have an officer, and then we have a firefighter paramedic, which leads to the fact that as firefighters for Moline, we are cross-trained, which I and I will talk about here in a minute. We work with them very closely also. They're paramedics and EMTs. We are trained to be paramedics and firefighters. We also go through training. We have special training for certain members of our department, which is TRT training or technical rescue training. You may have seen pictures of guys practicing rope rescue at the Tax Slayer Center. They'll go up into the roof and the ceiling. We have a MABUS unit, a mutual aid box alarms system of departments, of the paid departments. We have East Moline, Rock Island, Moline, Bettendorf, all participate in this MABUS unit, and they put together these teams, these rescue teams. They went just recently to the response for the chemical fire up in the Rockford area. We sent a team of Arsenal firefighters, East Moline firefighters, Rock Island and Moline firefighters, and even a Bettendorf firefighter paramedic. They all went up there and they helped man the emergency response for that department that was greatly taxed at the time. So we're able to do that. We sent a fire engine and a group of firemen down to Hurricane Katrina down in New Orleans several years back. So we do reach out to our neighboring communities. We do partner up much with Rock Island and East Moline, and we do even cross the bridge occasionally and assist vet north. So we're not just solely Moline. Obviously, Moline is our major concern, but we are able to reach out and assist. We're a 64 person department, and we currently, much like Chief Gault, I'm sure like Illini and Dispatch, we're always looking. Our numbers are difficult to fill at this time for whatever reason. So this is great that you guys are getting a chance to hear, maybe this will pique your interest. So back to where I was at, I think I kind of went on a squirrel there. 4 fire stations, 4 fire engines, and 2 other stations at Central and Station 3, that we also have an ambulance, which with our cross-trained paramedics and firefighters. So they can also do dual action. So if there's a fire, they put on the turnout gear, they put on the air pack, and they grab a hose and they go in and put out the fire. If it's a car accident, they'll respond and they will take care of the patient. They can provide extrication. We can use the jaws of life, much like you've seen on TV. Spreaders, we have to cut them out. They're trained on how to do that. So there's a lot of training that goes on. There's a lot that is on their shoulders that they, much like Chief Gault said, you don't know what each day is going to bring. So it's an interesting job in that way. You don't know what each day is going to bring, and each event is different. There's always something slightly off. A car accident is a car accident is a car accident, but there's always a little twist to it that you have to figure it out. Maybe something just isn't right, and you have to maybe solve that puzzle to bring it to a closure. So with the 2, what would our response would be if the accident took place at 60th Street and John Deere Road? Our Station 3, which is down by 41st Street and 38th Avenue, would be the responding station. They would get an engine company. On that engine company, like I said, is an engineer, a lieutenant, and a firefighter, and then they would get the ambulance, which would have either an EMT basic or 2 paramedics on there. So EMT basic and a paramedic. So we have to have at least 1 paramedic on the ambulance all the time. So their responses will be fairly quick because it's just down the road from us. But like I said, police is already on scene. They're already telling us, hey, this is what we got. You may want to consider, bringing another ambulance, or you may want to consider another engine just for manpower or, equipment that you might need on that scene. So we all work very closely together. Our call volume currently is going up every year, especially since the pandemic. Chief Gault said they handle about 14,000 911 calls. We're about half of that. We did about 7,300 calls last year for EMS, and that was a record year for us. And we're already over 6,300 calls this year, so I'm sure we'll break that again. This year, the number's going to continue to go up. So there's always a need. And with that being said, with 2 ambulances, handling that many calls, we're often calling Illini, we're often calling Rock Island Fire, who has an ambulance, for mutual aid. So we work closely with other agencies. They work with us to help protect the citizens of Moline or the visitors of Moline. So it's not a competition. It's more of a fact of we bring in people. We may not know everybody from Illini, but we know how to work with them. They know what to expect from us. We know what to expect from them. Same with police. Police know, that they need to make the scene safe for us, that our office that we're working in at that time is as safe as it could possibly be. So it's a really intricate how we work together. But it's exciting and it's rewarding when that outcome is completed and you have a positive outcome and we get them to the ER. And, we don't always know how it turns out, but, they do a fantastic job there and they're just as busy, if not busier than anybody right now, especially with what things are going on. So, we work together, we pull together, and I don't want to keep rambling if I wanted to. But yeah, that's how we do it. So we're going to respond. We may have both ambulances. Unfortunately, City of Moline doesn't have a hospital in the city. So we have to go either to Silvis or we have to go to Rock Island. So we're constantly out of town. So the call for service, we call for assistance from Illini is, we use them, we do call on them occasionally. So it does stress you, but it is very rewarding and it's very satisfactory to see how it goes from dispatch to police to fire and EMS and then to solely EMS base. So it's there's a lot of moving parts, but I think they move very well together.
So you're saying that it's not my agency, your agency. It's all right.
Yeah.
Good. So we got a call. It's a serious accident. Someone called. You guys are at the scene. So everything's under control. Can we say that? You mitigated, you prevented. that emergency get worse. So is it under control? Yeah. Can
Yeah.
I say that?
Sure.
Yeah. So, but okay. So we are safe. Okay. Thank you for the service. So what happened? We may have this control on the scene, but there is one single or one issue that we should consider, right? There's this driver or passenger in the accident. They may have still some sort of suffering or issues in Jews, right? Hopefully it's not deadly. Hopefully it's not an accident or an incident that we call like a deadly incident. But now, after we take control over the scene, the next stage is the ambulance, paramedic, and EMS. So in the United States, there are 300,000 registered EMS and paramedic. They are specifically working with the ambulances, and they are more in the emergency room, and that's their time now. They're going to be taking care of people in the scene, that they make sure that everyone's safe, right? So what you do as an ambulance, you work together with the fire department, obviously, but what else you want to say?
Again, thank you for having me here. Thank you for putting on this wonderful event to try to get, education and everything out there for other people to be able to, decide what they would like to do in life. My name is Jessica Heinz. I work for Genesis Ambulance Service. We do 911 coverage in East Moline, Silvis, Kelowna, up to Fort Byron. We also cover up in DeWitt and out in Toledo. We do 911 coverage here. We also do hospital transfers out of Genesis Silvis, or if there's another hospital that might need an extra ambulance, and we have some, then we can assist with that to get those patients that maybe at Genesis Silvis have, they need maybe something that the department doesn't, that they don't have there, the department that needs to be transferred to another facility. We also facilitate that as well. We work hand in hand a lot with all of these, all of these wonderful agencies, and it's all about resources, and we're all resources for each other and everything as well. So like earlier when they said we're like a family, we are like a family. We all give each other a hard time, but we also will all take care of each other if we need to. And with dispatch starting off, they're getting all the information and the initial stuff as well, but that dispatcher's also waiting for your maybe more resources to dispatch to maybe the scene. They're also keeping an ear out for if you're on any type of scene, the noise in the radio. So if someone might accidentally keys up, maybe the fire department has somebody come up that's trying to start things with them or something like that, the dispatcher's going to be listening to where, I think that my resource or my guys here that are at the scene, I think their safety is in question. So I'm going to send them another resource to make sure that they're safe, because we're all a family, right? Police shows up, they make sure it's all scene safety. No matter what scene that we get called to, it's all about scene safety. And that's where our police officers come in, and they come in to make sure the scene is safe, whether it's making sure there's no suspicious subjects on scene that might be, causing a problem, making sure that traffic is flowing the way it needs to flow to try to keep everything moving smoothly, but also keeping us safe. Fire's going to be there. They're going to be making sure that, if there's fire, obviously, getting that put out or getting the people that need to come out of there. For an accident scene, they're going to make sure that vehicle has gotten to a safe point to where we can work in there and that there's not going to be anything else. Maybe an airbag gets deployed. They're going to make sure that that airbag doesn't deploy later as it's sitting there. They're going to make sure that that vehicle is stable for the patients that maybe can't get out yet, and for the EMS providers or anybody that's going to have to get in that vehicle to provide that care for those patients. We're all a resource. So at that point, when we were to come on scene, if this was at the accident site where everybody's kind of said, I would be a mutual aid ambulance at that point. Maybe Moline's got another ambulance on another, 911 coverage at that point, or maybe there's just that many patients that need more resources, which is where I would come in with my ambulance Genesis, whoever would be on there. We use our EMT and paramedic level service. We sometimes have double paramedic, EMT paramedic. I'm a charge medic for on my shift, so I work on the schedule too, which that's a bear. I think anywhere to go. But also, I help run operations throughout the day. I also can come on and help assist me with charge of scene if I need to. So I might go up to, let's say, if he's command on the scene at that point, I might come up to him and say, hey, how many patients do we have? What are the resources? Do you need anything else from me besides taking care of patients? He might say, hey, can you get me another ambulance? I'm then going to notify my dispatch, which is Medcom, which is out of SEC over in Scott County. notify them, they'll get me another ambulance, or maybe he's already like, hey, I already got 2 of your ambulances coming, here are the patients, this one might be more critical. So at that point, then I'm going to go assist that patient. I might be, having fire, usually you'll have it all set up for me to where when I get there, the battery might be disconnected so that the airbags don't go out. It's stable. They might have stuff even opened up for me so I can get to that patient. Usually they'll have a guy maybe holding the patient's head so they can, maintain C-spine and make sure that everything's safe. So I'm going to come in and I'm going to assess my patient, see what threats I have going on, anything like that. Call it package my patient so I can safely get them to the ER at that point. And at that point, I might even say to him, like, hey, have you notified, Illini or Trinity of how many patients? And there's called Triage, which it goes by color on like patients that are like super critical or maybe just not so critical, or the walking wounded that you can still go to the hospital and get checked out, but you just, put them at that color. And so you might say, actually, I have 2 that are going to be going to Illini. They're this color. And I'll be like, I'll notify them because he's obviously got a million and one things going on. I'm a resource that I can handle that to be able to say, hey, Genesis, I'm going to be bringing you a patient. They're this color, but there's going to be 2, 3 more patients of this color coming so that ER can be prepared when I come in or when the other patients come in. So there's just a lot of moving parts, and nobody's job really stops until the end. And then there's also if it's a huge scene, maybe not a car accident, but maybe a tornado or something. There's also things beyond that. And those are incident management teams that come in and they pull from different resources. There's just a lot of different levels of first responder, and it could last on a scene for a half hour. It could last for a scene on a week. It just depends on what it is at that point. So after I get my patient packaged, I'm going to, do an assessment and see what needs to be done. If I need to, check that heart, I have an EKG or a heart monitor in there that I can put on the patient, check blood pressure, check pupils. I'm also going to, splint if I need to, start an IV, give medications as needed. I'm going to be taking all this information down about my patient, past medical history, all that. Then I'm going to call the hospital at that point. I'm going to be like, this is what I'm bringing in. This is age. This is the, their past medical history. Also, this is what's going on. This is what I'm seeing. This is what I got for my assessment. I'm going to be there at this time. So then I'm going to be there putting it out to the next puzzle piece to be able to have it to where she can be ready for what's coming in, and have the resources that she needs to pull together to be able to get that patient the best care and get them where they need to be, or stay there wherever they need to go at that. That's kind of what UMass does.
Okay, Jessica. So after listening to her and others, if you're not feeling safe yet, there's something good. I feel so calm and confident and protected when I listen to them, right? So thank you for the explanation. I have a question for the listeners, audience, because I'm an instructor and I like asking questions. So we have this incident, and we are about to go to the emergency room, right? We have this emergency department. So how many visits you think in a year, on a regular basis, like annually, that emergency departments are getting in an average? Can you guys shoot a number? How many emergency department visits are being done in a year in an average? Let's shoot a number. You guys know somehow. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I should have said that. Yeah. 7 and 10,000. All right. Another guess. I want to hear your team students. Yeah. 50,000. Okay. Anyone who wants to increase? 30,000. All right. So I checked the statistic before I come, and it says number of visits for emergency departments is 130 million in the United States. Not all of them are deadly, of course. So among this number, 35 million of injury related. Not all of them emergency, not from the crime scene or accident, but for the emergency department's perspective. 35 million of them injury related, and among them 2.3 million are needing a critical care, which is something serious. So when you think about the number 130 million is half of the population they are visiting for months at a time, right? Which makes sense. We made 3 visits over a day. to the emergency room last month for my kids. So that makes sense. All right. So next, we had an accident. The police, fire, taking care of the crime scene. We are safe now. Only person is not safe is the driver. Maybe we want them, him or her, to be safer. So here is the emergency room. We are transferred. We transfer the person and enter.
Yeah.
Well,
So thank you for allowing me to sit on such a distinguished panel. They talk about family, but we all share a common language. And I know that without each of these agencies, we couldn't do our jobs at all, because we always need them to tell us or to help us. I run the East Emergency Department. We also have West over in Davenport, Iowa. We average 200 people a day. So over, 52 weeks, we are one of the most busy hospitals in the state of Iowa. So we really rely on the out-of-hospital responders. So you get a 911 call. It goes to dispatch. It goes to the police. It goes to fire. But what you don't know is dispatch has called us back to tell us about the scene. Hey, we have a heads up. There are gunshot wounds. There's a shooting. There's multiple people on scene that have been shot. So we know how to work the emergency room, how we're going to move patients, how complex it's going to be. Say it's not just a car accident, but it is a car accident. We are going to rely first on dispatch, who may call us if it's a heads up, if it's very specifically bad. And then we're going to rely on the ambulance to tell us about how they arrived with the patients. If it's bad enough, fire comes with the ambulance. And if it's really bad, police, fire, and the ambulance come. So we work with all of these agencies pretty seamlessly, and we're very, very defensive of them. So you run from the cops and they tackle you. Not a lot of sympathy going on. And if you are a fireman and you come in and someone's bitten you, chances are there's not a lot of sympathy going on. Not for that, we are sympathizing with the fire, not so much with the patient. So we get the call. Depending on the complexity, we have multiple agencies that we can call, not multiple agencies, multiple agencies. So we will have to rearrange an entire emergency department, which means that you may be in this room, but I can't have you in this room because this is a big room that has specific instrumentation or resources in it, so you're going to move to another room. And it depends on what's in the lobby. We do the triage, which is very important for us, and it's green, yellow, red, black, and black would be dead on the scene. So let's say that dispatch has called me. They're on the scene in Moline with a car accident. Well, in that car accident, there was a death, and they had to be extricated, and it took them 15 minutes. I would know that the person that is coming to us is very critical and is going to need some critical care. Whereas if they call us and they say they were going 20 miles an hour and they hit a phone pole because they slipped off their brake. It's very different care. So we have to be ready from the very critical dying patient to the thoughts so much. And it depends on age. We treat from birth to death, from young to old. We do all of those ages. So that car accident that she is dispatching, that she is calling me about, they're 21. Well, a 21-year-old is going to be treated much differently than an 85-year-old because that 85-year-old has different pathophysiological changes in their bodies. And because we have to treat that, we will set up differently. And we have what we call a trauma alert, which is in a single room. We have radiology, respiratory, our physicians, our trauma surgeons all respond at the same time to that critical incident out of off the scene. How it's different than a house fire. You would have, say we have a house fire who has, they have soot and swelling in their face, and they've only been burned in their face. You would have a very different response, and that would require respiratory and maybe anesthesia, depending on how that fire was and how burned their face is, which is different than the police calling and saying, we have a patient who we cannot control, which is called excited delirium. And we would have to get ready for that. And all the while, dispatch can keep us up to date. They will give us the heads up. Even though the most of the time we were calling Scott County dispatch, we're like, where are you coming to transfer our patients? And then we also, because we don't have there's some specialties that we're missing in this area. We have the ability to transfer, and we have the ability to fly. And we have to be able to do that in a very short period of time. So, say that it's, the car accident would be different. Say it was a 50 car pile. That may be calling in a MABUS unit, because that response time is going to take different resources. And we also partner with the MABUS. We actually, Genesis E sets up for we do all the disaster stuff with the arsenal. We do the fix, which is a disaster multi-agency thing. And so we're involved, I think, as the emergency room. We want to be involved with the other agencies because we all speak the same language. And they bring us people, and we also treat them. And so the car accident, we'll say the car accident, the dispatch is called, fire and police are on scene. She has called me and she said what? What is the patient? Think of.
23-year-old male restrained driver of a car that was hit in the front and the back. There was intrusion into the vehicle. Airbags were deployed. There was some bedding on the steering wheel. Patient has head, neck, and back pain. I had the patient fully immobilized and the next collar and long cord. But then vitals are 153 over 91. Heart rate of 111, showing signs of backline monitor. He's 100% on 2 liters. Blood glucose of 131. I have 2 IDs established, 16 in their left AC and 18 in their right AC. Patient has no real medical history, no drug allergies, not take daily medication. I'll be there back to you. And then I would get a room ready, find a nurse that's capable to take that patient and alert the doctor if say they have a loss of consciousness, because we're going to need to get them to have to their testing very quickly.
So just a simple one incident, an example for us to imagine what it is about, and we face them on a daily basis, not one, maybe multiple. But when we consider about like seasonal or once in a lifetime incidents like tornadoes or storms or terrorist attacks, and when you consider about the size of the event, type of the event, damage, level of the damage, and when you consider about the different times of the year, like seasons, winter, spring, or hot weather and sun, in summer, when you also consider the level of agencies like state, local, and national level, we, in addition to these organizations, agencies, we have emergency management agencies, we have military, National Guard, FBI, EIA, and FEMA, Homeland Security, Search and Rescue, and within all these units, we have special units like bomb squad, United Operator, SWAT, whatever. So all these complicated relationship, agencies, different level of government, and also adding another part from private sector. Not also public, we have also private sector that serves for the community and provide food, electricity, shelter. We have profit and non-profit organizations. They are serving before, during, and after emergency, like the Cross and the agencies that provide communication, electricity, food, etc. So it's a big topic, big field. And it's impossible for us to cover everything. And that part is like a daily stuff that we are seeing. And maybe you guys will never see in your life in such emergencies. I mean, if you're lucky enough, if you're careful enough, maybe you're not going to be calling 911 for your emergency. Maybe you can call for the thing that you see, but for yourself, maybe it's a one time or two times in your life. But these guys are seeing and getting those calls on a regular basis and helping them, making sure everything is on the ship. So that was the introduction part of it. All right, so we will have a deeper conversation now. Okay, I guess maybe. Sure. So we collected questions from students when they are registering, and more than 70 questions I got. I tried to categorize them, and basically they are having like why questions, how questions, what questions, and I don't want to give like many details. Many questions can be answered by a simple search on internet. But I want to hear if you can like answer everyone and say a couple sentences for that. I'm trying to select one representative question for each and try to hear from your side. So we have lots of why questions. Why you became a first responder, police officer, firefighter, medic, paramedic at the first place? What was the idea behind it? How it started? How did you get this inspiration? All right. Would you mind? We can start from that since we have the mic. Angela, how did you decide to become for example, the emergency room nurse at the first place?
I was actually offered two positions. One was behavioral health and one was emergency nursing. And my mom is a behavioral health nurse, so I turned that down. And the other one was the emergency room. But I actually fell in love with the fast pace. I love mystery, so every patient is a mystery to be solved. And I was an adrenaline junkie. And I cannot think of anything else I would rather do than what I do.
Jessica?
For me, I was originally not living in this area. I was living in a tiny town in Mount Carroll, Illinois, little tiny thing. I was a stay-at-home mom with my kids. My older two kids, they were in school, so I was kind of home alone at that point. And I wanted to help serve my community. I had a little part-time job, but I wanted to help serve my community. So I looked into the ambulance that they had there, and they paid for me to get my EMT at that point. And so I started kind of running with them, and then life changed, and I decided to move around this area. And it just became my passion. I just wanted to be able to help my community, which a lot of smaller towns do have volunteer services. You live in those small towns, look at they always are needing assistance, volunteers and everything, fire and EMS. I just really enjoyed what I did. I enjoyed helping people. I enjoyed the mystery of it. Because sometimes you get up on the scene and there's something wrong with that patient. You've got to try to, check the boxes and figure out what it was. Started at Genesis, went to paramedic school here at Black Hawk. Really enjoyed the program. Really enjoyed all of that. Became a charge medic at Genesis and kind of been there ever since.
Phyllis?
So my story started here at Black Hawk. Also, I was taking engineering and technology classes, and remember one day I was in my second semester and my second year, and I was in a statics and strengths class, and I looked at the student beside me, and I said to her, I said, what am I doing here? This math is hard. Pre-calc and trig and statics and strengths, and it just wasn't my fit. So, I happened to be going by a fire station of the old Station 5 on the avenue one day, and firemen have to be outside, and I stopped talking with him, and I said, this seems like a really interesting career. He said, yeah, it is. And, he said, there's no one day that's the same as the next. And that really intrigued me. That really got my attention. I was like, and I think change is necessary. If my job changes every day, that's awesome. So I asked what to do to get started, and he said, it's turning into such a medical related field that told me to get my paramedic license. So that's what I did, and I started working at ambulance shortly in '94, and so that's what started. So working on the ambulance, and then got a job on the as a fireman, and eventually got my dream job. Only had to test 3 times to get on. So third time the charm. So yeah, that's what it just. And I think everybody's gonna say you get to help people is very satisfying, but no 2 days are the same. And there's always something interesting. It makes for some interesting conversations at the dinner table at the end of the day. So but it couldn't be happy with a blessed job. So that's kind of
Yeah, so when I was a little kid, I grew up in a small town, and my dad was a volunteer firefighter. And back in those days, the way someone called the fire department in a small town, the phone rang differently in our house. It had a different, rang faster. It had like an odd pattern. And I remember as a little kid, my dad would never run to the phone. He would run to the door, and my mom would go and answer the phone, and he would start putting shoes on, or it was winter. He'd or put his stuff on, and he'd stand at the door to see if he needed to run out. And so my mom would listen to the call or whatever and tell him if he needed to go or not. And he would literally run to the fire station because we just lived a block away. And I just kind of admired that. I mean, he was a businessman in town, worked for a lawyer, and did tax and stuff. So he had this dual role. And then my uncle was a police officer in East Moline, where he eventually got a job. And so it's always around that public service aspect. So it was kind of, I didn't realize it, but it was in my mind. So when I went to college, I actually was pursuing law. Both of my parents worked for lawyers. And I thought to myself, it would be more fun to run out the door and run and do stuff than it would be to sit in an office and read law books. And so I kind of started looking and applying in college to a bunch of police departments. And at that time, in the 90s, crime was really bad. It was a similar thing you're seeing now. But and I thought, I'd just really like to be out there and make that difference in the community and be a part of that. And so it just kind of clicked. It was like those things from my past. And then as you're a college student trying to find your journey, it kind of all came together, and it worked out well for me.
Sounds like your mom's a dispatcher too.
Yes.
For me, growing up, I always had a passion for law enforcement. That's what I wanted to do. I was a member of the North Police Explorers from 14 to 21, so I spent 7 years there, learning how to do, the work and stuff like that. Back then, the jobs were very competitive. Everybody wanted to be in law enforcement. We had 200 people apply for one spot. Now we barely had 10 people apply. So it's changed over the last 10 to 12 years. I did get my foot in the door with the sheriff's office dispatching, so I just enjoyed what I do. It is difficult because we don't get the closure, but like I said, fortunately, I'm also a reserve deputy, so I'm a part of the sheriff's office, so I get to respond and be the backup to them. We do squad duty every Friday, Saturday night, so we supplement their staffing. Our reserve units, we got 40 sworn reserve deputies now, so we assist those. So right on that.
So yeah, thank you for being from the team. So we have many questions about positive and negative things about the job, like what's the most rewarding part of your job, the memory that sticks with you, the good or bad, the trouble moments. So I want to categorize them, and I want you guys tell me one scared moment that you feel very bad, awful, powerless. And I want you can give specific like information. One positive aspect of the thing that you are doing for the job, rewarding aspect of the job, and I want you to compare both of them. Like, which one is like? Try to give a percentage, like proportion. So the incidents that you are responding are more rewarding or more scary, or negative or positive. And you can end with the most valuable lessons your job has taught you. So one negative, one positive, which one is more from your perspective, and what did you learn? We can start from here. So you're preparing for the answer. I got this.
I was preparing. I would have to say, with being on the phone is kind of difficult. One of the calls I remember was an open line. A girl was in the semi, and we determined later with this guy, and she was on I-80 and he was beating her. And all we had was we were able to track. We work with the wireless carriers and stuff to track phones, and we have some other programs that we do utilize, but it was a call that I specifically took, and hearing everything was going on, you didn't see, all we could see was a pinpoint movement, so we didn't know exactly what it was. She couldn't give a description of the semi, nothing, so he ended up beating her almost to death and dumped her off somewhere down in Davenport, which we did find her, but that was, to go through that whole call and to finally get her on the line, or I think somebody ended up calling because they saw her dumped off down there. So that was one of the crazy things that sticks out. Also not related to this call, like when I promoted into quality assurance, one of the more senior dispatchers applied for the supervisor to fill my position. So it's kind of rewarding to work with somebody and help lead them, somebody older than me, more towards the end of their career to, want to step up and be the supervisor and to be able to provide that leadership and guidance. And, sometimes older people don't like to listen to younger people and, stuff like that. So it was really awesome to see. That was a rewarding thing for me as far as being able to help grow our staff.
So do you see more of positive things over the years or less when you compare good and bad?
I'd say more positive.
With
911 calls, we don't always get the resolutions of the calls because we're not, we hang up the phone and we're on to the next call. So it's difficult. We're not at the police departments anymore like some of them are, where they do get that closure and can see the officers. We only know, what we know at the time. And sometimes, like the way we process stress, everybody deals with it differently. And, some people in dispatch do suffer from PTSD as well. So, that's stuff we work and we have programs that there is help out there.
Okay. So one valuable lesson that you want to share with us after 8 years.
Like I said, it's just.
It can be a tip for everyone, like to make sure you're not putting your car on lock.
Especially not in Davenport. We'll take it easy. It's not locked down. Yeah. Like I said, we just all work together and we're always there. We want to provide the best service we can to anybody that when they call 911, it's their worst day. So, we try to be there. We deal with some difficult callers. They will cuss at us. They're very frustrated. So we try to do the best that we can.
Mm-hmm. So I don't, it's not an advertisement, but have you seen the Gault new Netflix movie about the dispatcher? Have you seen it?
Yeah, I did.
You seen it? Angela?
Right.
Okay. that is good. Just like a month ago, it is about the dispatcher. Do you know the name of the artist? Is very famous.
Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah.
Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yes. So the old movie is in one room, dispatching room, and the next room, and the restroom. And they're not going out. And you can feel everything that they are responding. Like it's different, like locations and the crowd scenes he's responding, talking all the time. If you have a chance, it's impossible to understand what they feel when they are taking call. But that movie is giving that feeling somehow. I recommend it, by the way. Okay. Chief, what?
Positives and negative experiences. I'll start with the negatives so we can have a positive. 1999, I was on patrol, and as you probably heard, we have radio systems. You can hear other activity. You can get dispatch, or you can hear a dispatch that may not be necessarily directly related to law enforcement that you may need to also go to. And there was an EMS call in the area that I was responsible for patrolling. There was a baby not breathing. And I was only about a block or so away from that. So I responded, and when I got there, I got in my car, ran up to the house, and this lady just handed me an infant in a diaper, and she's crying, just hands me this infant at the front door and says help. And the baby was blue, and I think I was, I was much younger. Much younger at the time. I didn't have kids at the time, and I was just like, oh my goodness, this is like, we go through all the CPR training and everything. I was like, holy cow, this is real. And so I, trying to do CPR on this child. The fire department got there, and the ambulance service got there pretty quick. Seemed like forever, but in reality, it was really quick. And then unfortunately, that baby passed away. And it was really difficult to deal with. I had followed up. I went to the hospital, and I think what helped me was the doctor that came out and knew that I had tried to do CPR on the baby, and just kind of explained that baby had likely a negative outcome even before we got there, in the circumstances of the child's illness and then cause of death. And so I think that's also something that we talk about, being a family and communicating together and trying to support each other. I'm not going to lie to you, we do see a lot of negativity in the world. And I think if you're going to go into this field, you have to be prepared that you're going to see people at their worst. You're going to be involved in crisis situations, and you are going to see death. You're going to see dead bodies. You're going to see people die. You're going to be involved in those things. So, it is a reality of a first responder. All of us here have dealt with that in some form, and that's also part of life. And we serve a role in that to try to help, to try to save. But ultimately, if you're faith-based, you probably believe somebody else is making those ultimate calls. But we're trying to play our role in helping. So from a positive side, I've had a lot of great moments in my career where I think that I've positively contributed to the community. When I was a lieutenant in investigations at East Moline, we had a small child that was kidnapped, and I found him in Thailand. And it took a long time, about a month, but I was able to get that child back, and reuniting that child with his mother back in the United States was a pretty rewarding experience. And in fact, I still get Father's Day cards from them every year, which was pretty neat. But there's a lot of those. You mentioned is there more positives and negatives. Listen, the job is what you make it. In whatever career that you choose, whether there's more positives or negatives, is your choice on what you choose to make out of the job, out of your life. You only get one of these lives. And so, you have a choice every day to come in and make an impact on not only other people, but yourself. And the attitude that you choose to bring to the workforce and being a positive person and focusing on those positives. I don't know over a person's life, there probably is a 50-50 positives and negatives. But if you dwell on negative experiences, they seem like they outweigh the positives. And I guarantee you, in whatever you choose to do, there are a lot of positives, and you should be proud of those and focus on those positives and those in our world that you're making a difference.
Same question?
Yeah.
I'm gonna do the same thing as you go. And this week. The best way to go. I'll start with the negative. And again, there's many. Just to let you know, there are a lot of things you will see in this job. You'll see death. You'll see. We see people at their worst, having their worst day, and that's all about. I'll always see people on their worst day. You don't see them having the best day. I'll go back in the Wayback Machine on this one. Is when I was working in Muscatine as a paramedic on the fire department, and it set in for me real early and real soon in my career that things can change real quickly in just a heartbeat. We went on a call on Friday night. The motorcycle was driving, and an elderly lady didn't see him, hit the back of his tire, caused him to fall. Wasn't wearing a helmet, and you can probably guess how the outcome was. It was very bad. We did everything we could, took him to the hospital. But one of the things that stuck out to me, I don't know if it's a PTSD or whatever, but is there was pizza all over the road. So he was picking up a Casey's Pizza, and we did everything, and we ended up talking to the cops later, and the cops had his ID in that, and they went to his home to check on his home to see if he had any family. Door was unlocked, TV was on, and all this guy was doing on a Friday night was going down to Casey's, was going to go pick up a pizza, and he was going to go home and watch TV. And that changed my mindset in a blink, because that's just how quick things can change, and that's always been the mantra I try to carry with me. And I could tell a lot of other stories, but I won't. But if that's a takeaway you can take from it, I'll skip to that. Take each day, I think Chief said this too, take each day and do something positive with it, because nothing's promised, nothing's guaranteed. So switch to something more positive. When I was working at Medic as a paramedic, we had a call at one of the junior highs, and it was for a junior high kid, maybe 13, 14 years old, having a severe asthma attack. And we get into the hallway, he's laying on the floor, and he's not moving any air. And I'm a fairly new paramedic at the time. I'm thinking, all right. So I get down, I intubate the kid. We're in the hall, we're doing all this in the hallway. We intubate him, we start breathing for him, we get him in the ambulance, we bag airway treatment into him, we open his lungs up, get him so he's much better, get him to I think we took him to Emergencies that night. And anyhow, I'm doing report, doing my paperwork, and I come out, and by that time his family had gotten there. And they shook my hand and said, thank you. I didn't think I was going to do this. That was all it was. That's all it took. Is for somebody to say thank you and genuinely mean it. That meant a lot. So, again, take each day and make something positive out of it, because you just don't know what's going to happen. But there are so many good things that you can do in this job. So if you have the capabilities and the mindset to do it, this is for you. That's what needs to come out of it. So,
for me, there's a lot. There's so many stories that you guys try to pick from and everything. Like one thing that, it is difficult because everything is different every day when you go. And so some days, those days are hard, and those affect you, and it affects you in different ways, and it can affect you at different times. And again, I'm going to get back to that family thing. So if I have this bad accident or bad anything, I have a family right here that I can talk to. If Angela's the nurse, I hand off to her, and I can talk to each other. It's called debriefing. At times they have structured ones where you can go to. We all take care of each other. So I could talk to her about it. Any of these guys, if I was like, I'm just having a rough time. Having to relive those moments are very difficult, and having people that you can talk to that understand, that speak our language, that is something nice to have. As far as a scary moment when I was like, oh, God, what's going on? I was a fairly new paramedic. I was a charge medic at the time, so I was kind of running operations for the day. And Genesis also will do standbys for different things, standbys for hockey games, whatever. Well, there was a company that had been putting in a brand new furnace, and it was a very hot summer, and it was everything like that. So they wanted an ambulance to be there in case any of their workers got too overheated. So we've been doing that, and we had finished that standby. It was a couple weeks or whatever. So then that company, they had an explosion, and they said it was by that area. and it was at one of our outlying locations. So I get a call from the ambulance that they're like, send me everything you have. And I'm like, well, I gotta keep people here too, because I have to take care of my community as well that we have here. So, you know, I was like, do you have any numbers or anything like that? He's like, I don't know how many people are going to be there. I don't know. So at that point, that's when I start making phone calls. I'm like, I'm going to send you these ambulances. I will be up there here shortly. So I'm calling my supervisor. I'm calling my other supervisor. Wonderful guys. They both work for Scott County. They're Brian and Jim. Called them. I'm like, you know, this is what's going on. We all met together. Dispatched, got of course our director. We dispatched our Mavis truck that we have for Mavis 39 to bring a trailer up there to be able to set things up because we knew this was going to be a long day. So we're calling. I sent out a text to all the staff for Genesis Ambulance. I didn't all call. I need everybody to come here. I need you to text me what time you're going to be here. And it was like that family. We just erupted at that point. We get to the scene and I had extra ambulances there. We also had notified East at that point of, you know, this could be potentially be really bad. Luckily, there wasn't that many injuries. There wasn't anything really life-threatening from that point. We got those patients where they needed to go. We had a patient that needed to go to the burn unit. It was, we had gotten all those things in motion. But it was scary because I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, this is it. This is the big thing that we've seen now. This is the stuff. And I also had to, my hospitals, you know, back Genesis Silva's contacted me. I'm like, hey, I have this patient that's intubated that needs to go to another place. I need you to get me that specialty paramedic to come down and do that. So having that big operation, having what the potential could be, luckily it wasn't as bad as the outcome was, but we got to work with all the volunteer units up there as far as the fire department, setting things up, making sure that they had the resources that they needed as far as water, cooling blanket, or cooling like towels and stuff like that, getting that all set up. The scariest part was going into that and not knowing what I was going to have. At the end of it all, seeing all the moving parts, seeing everybody work together, seeing that and have to help kind of manage those things, that was something that got my passion just going into that more of seeing that incident management and just brought what I enjoyed about that much more. That was the positive for me, seeing that it's not just me on an ambulance going and seeing people on their worst days and helping them, which is a wonderful part that I enjoy. There's the biggest picture, and that's the part that I really like too. There's so many more avenues than I even anticipated.
Yeah. So we can take this as an valuable lesson that we learned, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I will start with the worst. Well, I don't know. You know, the worst one was seeing a traumatic death the first time. That was the worst. It was a young person who had decided that he needed to jump off the building and then And the best thing, so one of the takeaways from, I'm going to say from the ER perspective is, if you don't know and your furnace blows up, you will lose your clothes. They will actually blow up. And so if it was a boiler that blew up, chances are she brought us a naked person. So don't sell if your boiler blows up. And the best part is it is such a huge responsibility, and to stand next to people and to witness them on the worst days. They may not remember you, actually, but you're there to witness what they're going through and to help them go through it. I recently was at a doctor's appointment, and some lady came up to me and she said, "You're so-and-so," and I said, "Oh no, why do you know me?" She said, "Well, you were my child's nurse," and I said, "Oh, was that a good thing or a bad thing?" Because you never know, it's their worst day, and they don't really. And your staff, out of all the nursing careers, they remember you the least. So, like, if you go to the ICU, they have flowers and statues, and the ER, we get sworn at and spit on. And so she comes up to me, she goes, "I just want to give you a hug." And I'm like, all right. And she says, "What you don't know is this, my son was so sick. And the things that you said to me to make me feel better in that moment and to stabilize me has changed my perspective." And she was so grateful. And so those are those moments that put you past all of the really bad stuff. And then the bad moments, you need to remember that, you know what, we're all human, and we get to help the people through it.
All right, thank you. There are lots of questions to be asked, and I'm sure hours of hours conversation will not be enough for us to get the answer. So, guys, go get visits, ask appointment from these places when you have an interest. Spend some time together. Go ride along, participate ride alongs, like do volunteer job for fire, for hospitals, for dispatching. They're open for everyone. So I'm gonna stop asking questions here, and just wanna see if any particular question from the audience that you guys wanna ask. If not, we were gonna be having this Google for a session. Go from there. If you're familiar with the format, and again, it's from YouTube channel is doing this. So panelists will peel up one by one from the top. These are the questions asked on Google, the most asked questions. So the Google is kind of completing your sentence when you type something, right? And when you type why dispatcher, it gives options. So those are from that list. So I try to keep them there, and the logic make it some fun activity. So we will be doing this. If we can, if you don't want to start. You want to start with?
All right.
So, yeah.
My
So
first
show,
question.
yeah, show them and feel
Why are 911 dispatchers so rude? Fortunately for our agency, it's something we strive to, like I said, provide the best customer service as possible. Like in any profession, sometimes, when stuff makes the media or, there's good and bad in all professions, but fortunately with our agency, I do quality assurance, so I am evaluating calls, providing feedback. So if we get any agency complaints, stuff like that, it's addressed right away. Sometimes, we may, we're dealing with multiple things. We have to put people on hold. We're answering another call. So sometimes it may come across that we're short or maybe rude, and, some people don't even realize it. So we bring that to their attention and correct those things. Are we doing all?
Yeah, why don't you share?
All right.
Share with them.
It's like opening gifts.
Yeah, and we can have like a short answer for each because we have many. So just
Okay, I'll just make this quick. Where do dispatchers work? We work in some dispatchers are in the police agencies. Like I said, we're in consolidated, so we consolidated Bettendorf, Davenport, and Scott County all into one, so we have a separate building. And dispatchers track your phone. I kind of touched base on this a little bit ago. We do work with the wireless carriers and Rapid SOS. We do have to send subpoena records to them. If we have to get a subscriber information or location, like I said, we do work with those. So that is a tool that we use. And dispatchers work from home? Unfortunately, no. We cannot work from home. I don't think that will ever be able to happen. Do dispatchers get PTSD? Yes, they do. Like I said, we're part of the first responder family. We're taking those traumatic calls. Some people get triggers from hearing certain noises on the phone. It's happened at our own agency. So that's something we work with the EAP. Different. There's a responder help that we're a part of too. So we can dial into other dispatchers and first responders. You need a degree to be a dispatcher. Each agency has their own requirements. For our agency, we just require a high school diploma, 18. We do all the training in-house. So it's not necessary to have a degree to become a dispatcher. Our starting wage right now is like $22.73. So it's a good starting wage. Why are dispatchers female? That's incorrect. Obviously. We do have a lot of females, but we are very diverse. Our director is a guy. We have our admin assistant's a guy. We have some technology people, and we got a whole handful of male dispatchers. So, like I said, we're very diverse. Why do dispatchers say the time? Time stamps are very critical. Somebody's going in custody, we always repeat the time. Stuff like that. That's all gets documented into our CAD, which is our computer-aided dispatch system. And that all helps the officers for their reports and such. So That's why we say the time, so it's documented on the radio. All of our radio traffic's recorded as well as our phone conversation.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, Kristen's for the police here. Do police keep track of warnings? In our agency, yes, we do. The law requires us to keep track of information about people that we stop. So those are filled out in a piece of paper, and the records department does enter those into the records database. Where police take your car? So typically, if each agency will have an impound agreement with a towing company. So for example, we use Quad A Towing, which is in Rock Island. However, in some cases they may need to take it to the police department to be processed, or other large agencies like Chicago Police Department have their own impound lots. So I would imagine that it's probably a call that the dispatch center gets quite a lot. Where is my car? Also a famous movie. Can police track your phone? Yes. Under some circumstances. Obviously, in the United States, you have a lot of rights to privacy, but in some cases, we can utilize and oftentimes use the dispatchers to request a GPS location for a cell phone. Does police presence deter crime? Yes. That's probably an entire philosophical debate, but yes, there's a lot of research out there that police presence does deter crime. Why police touch your car? Is this the old myth of the touching it on the way up to the back of a traffic stop? So when police officers pull over a car, a traffic stop is often one of the most dangerous things for a police officer to do. In fact, one of the reasons that police officers today are wearing black bands on their badges are for Officer Tyler Simmons of Pontoon Police Department did a traffic stop on a stolen vehicle yesterday or 2 days ago and was killed by an individual in a stolen vehicle. So there's a lot of tactical maneuvers that officers make to keep themselves safe, as well as the people inside the vehicle or other officers that are on that. So some of that probably is habit out of the approach that the officer chooses to take to approach up to the vehicle. Why police should wear body cameras? So obviously I have a body camera on today. Body cameras have become great technology for law enforcement to give an account of what occurred. We're into a kind of an era in America where people want to see everything to believe it. I think that's just kind of where we're at in society. There's cameras everywhere. It's become television shows. It's become, in Target has surveillance cameras. Cities have surveillance cameras, and kind of juries sometimes feel like they need to see evidence. So I think it's a good, unbiased account of what occurred. However, I do think that people don't understand all the time that the perspective of a body camera can be different from that officer, or obviously you're only going to see a certain angle, and there are some video compression concerns about body cameras. So there's a lot more to it than just simply what the body camera shows. How police officers deal with stress? Not very well. That this is a big problem in law enforcement with PTSD or officers, and typically males who don't like to express their emotions or talk about their feelings or talk about situations. So there has been a big push recently, the last couple of years, about officer wellness, trying to get officers to open up more to either chaplains or peer support groups. I think that was mentioned down here a little bit ago about peer support groups or debriefings. In general, I think police officers will kind of go into whatever habits they enjoy, whether it's music, working out, fitness. A lot of officers will either work out, run, do different things to try to relieve stress. The problem is when they don't deal with stress, and it either turns into an alcohol abuse problem or even problems at home with their family. How police find stolen cars? Well, there's some of that is good police work, whether it might be officers diligently working their beats. We tell officers to take ownership of the beats that they're assigned to, whether they're running license plates or looking for suspicious activity, running that plate to find out if they're stolen. Some agencies have license plate readers that will alert officers to hot plates, which are in the Secretary of State's list as being stolen. Some vehicles can be tracked, like that have OnStar that have been stolen, or more modern vehicles. So, and sometimes citizens find them for us, call dispatch and say, hey, this vehicle is abandoned here on the street, and an officer responds. It must be a stolen vehicle. So a lot of different ways.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I have, where do firefighters sleep? Well, this is a great question after the police just went, isn't it? Firefighters, the paid career firefighters, we have separate. Most of them have separate dorms. When I first started at Moline Fire, we had a large dorm room. So if you wanted to get any sleep, especially with certain older engineers or officers, you had to get in there. You had to go to bed at 7 o'clock at night because some of those guys could really snore and bring down the roof. But we have sleeping facilities now. Pretty much everybody has their own individual room, and that's one of the things about a firefighter is. One of the jokes.
That they do a lot of sleeping?
Yeah, one of our mantras, the first mantra I learned was eat until you're sleepy and sleep until you're hungry. And then that's how the day will go. So, can a firefighter arrest you? Now, my police chief, Chief Gault's counterpart, he does have arresting ability. Correct me if I'm wrong. I believe he can arrest me for arson. I think that's probably about the only arresting ability that he has. So yeah, you can. Can a firefighter have a beard? No. You can't have facial hair, and that's due to the SCBA that we wear. Now, there are studies that have come out that show that the SCBA does provide sufficient protection, even if you do have facial hair, because there's positive pressure, and it does keep your mask clear of smoke and that. But I would say 99% of career fire departments require you not to have excessive facial hair just due to the safety factor. Do firefighters charge you? Is that like, do we charge them for going to fires? Well, if you live in a city and you pay your property tax, we do sort of charge you that way. That's how we do get our pay is derived through property tax. So we kind of do in a way. EMS calls for departments that have ambulances. If we do transport you in an ambulance with the fire department, we do send a charge out for that also, but not for fire response. Some cities do have a response where they'll charge you for the number of fire engines or police cars that respond to car accidents and stuff like that, but Moline does not do that. Are firefighters in demand? I think everybody that is representing a job here today is in demand. So yes, there's a very high demand for every one of these positions up here. Why do firefighters use Dalmatians? So this is a good history question. Back in the day when the fire engines, the steamers were pulled by horses, they would respond. And the story I've been told and the legend I learned was the reason they would have Dalmatians is the Dalmatians would run down the road with the horse-drawn engine, and they would fight off other dogs or any other animals or people that were in the way. They were basically used as kind of clearing the path for the horse-drawn fire engine. So that's why the Dalmatians ended up in the firehouse. Do paramedics work in hospitals? This is probably a better question for Jessica, but they do. So they work in hospitals. I know at Illini, they help supplement chores and skills, IVs, and whatever else needs to be done. I'm not sure how much you do that now that you have separate quarters, but
sometimes they have techs that the ER will hire themselves. That'll be paramedics that'll tech in the ER. I know that Silvis, when if they get just a lot of patients in there, they'll call and say, "Hey, do you guys have an ambulance available that can come and will post there and will assist in the ER, whether it's starting these helping cleaners or whatever." So
we actually have paramedics in our ERs, and we're Yeah, and medic is not very happy about it because he took all their
Sure.
took all their paramedics.
Upset
But
Linda, huh?
but to work in our years, they have to have a CCT, so they have to be a critical care paramedic.
And the last one is, where do paramedics wait for calls? Well, if you're a firefighter paramedic, you can do it in a recliner watching TV. But I know a lot of times when I worked at Medic, and I know a lot of, like Jessica said, they post in certain spots, and I'll let her answer a little bit more of that.
We'll post, Genesis Ambulance, we'll post at, we have a building there on, Avenue of the City across from McDonald's that we'll post there. We also post at the Kelowna Fire, one of the Kelowna fire stations. They have a little setup for us that we can post there. Also, in our DeWitt quarters and our Aledo quarters, they have houses, and actually in our upper Island County, up in Fort Byron, they have a house there that we rent that has sleeping space and a grill. First responders. Why do we need first responders? To respond first. If there's an emergency or anything like that, they're the ones that can kind of get there. And assess the situation, whether it, to like protect somebody if there's a fire or anything like that. In all areas, some of the, like I said earlier, some of the smaller areas like Kelowna, Erie, other places like that, they might not have career departments, but they have volunteer services, volunteer fire departments, and volunteer ambulance services. Those people, they do training as well. They do training on the fire side. They also, paramedic, Erie ambulance that doesn't volunteer does the same education as I do. They have to go through paramedic class too. So to get there, to get that first assessment, to be able to get that emergency care to those people that may not live close to the hospital, and it might be a little drive for them. How do first responders deal with death? In multiple different ways. Sometimes with they have EAPs, you rely on the other people that are closest to you, family, EMS family, or any of the first responder family. We talk like that a lot of the time. Some of the time, though, when there's certain, it's one of those things where we know we did everything we could. We've been educated, we worked really hard to get where we are, and so we know that we have done everything we could, and we gave that person the best chance they could. So that's kind of that. With my service as well, we'll do transfer some people to the hospice house over versus a vet norm. That's one of those things. It's a natural process, and for me, when I do this, it's a privilege to be here for that person, to be able to help them get through that comfortably. Whether it's like sometimes I'll pay me to the back of my ambulance. One of those things where it's a privilege to be able to be in that person, what it's like to be able to make that transition smooth and comfortable for them. Why first responders are important.
Yeah, actually, that one for the finishing everything. So most of the questions are answered over the panels. You don't need to
just to take care of people and help get the assistance they need faster, because we're not in the hospital, we're out there mobile to come to them. How to thank a first responder. Food. Anyway, I mean, even some people, if they see us at the gas station or something, they'll thank us. They will bring it around Christmas time. We usually always give baskets and stuff like that. I mean, anything, even just a simple thank you is appreciated. That's essentially there.
Actually, this event for that purposes, so we are trying to create a platform for people to thank and thank you. So, do you guys have a bag for you guys on the table in order to create a contact? I will ask you to take one when you're leaving. All right, so we have a short session now. I want to thank you guys for being here, for sharing energy. I encourage everyone, whether it's a student or someone at all, go ahead and their offices, places, have some time together and chat. And especially if you're looking at a career in your future, do it more frequently. I will take you to your seats for the second short part of the panel. And thank you for being here. Thank you very much. So we have Heather and Victor. We will be having them. Let me read. Okay, Heather is a dispatcher at the same time. Shappard from Rock Island County Sheriff Department. 7 years of experiences. Combined law enforcement experience in almost 18 years and bachelor degree in psychology from San Andreas. Thank you for coming. Victor Moreno is a retired police chief. He has spent how many years? 26 years in police agencies. He's a retired police officer, retired police chief, and at the moment he's an instructor at UT High School, teaching law enforcement. So we will be talking about, like, really short, about the life after job, like when you decide it's okay to do this, and when you try, how do you adjust, but before that, Victor will mostly talk about it, and I want to listen Heather from the family perspective, like that when we are talking about, Vice President was saying that they have two families. One family is waiting at home, the other family is working together. So I thought that this is important for us to remember that perspective. It's not just first responders, it's also their families. Because when they're responding cases, they're not with their families. And sometimes it's during Thanksgiving or Christmas and important days and graduations and like games. And that is the part that I wanted to have some conversation, nice with this event. And I want to hear from Heather, how would you say as a family member of that first responders, do you say it's easy to become one of them or difficult? And how can you handle the difficult times that your partner is facing on a regular basis and daily? So if you don't mind sharing that perspective, we'll be happy.
First of all, I have to say it kind of makes you a little bit cynical, so you kind of carry that over home to your family. I have 3 children from 24 to 9, and so I think through this process, my kids have become very observant. They read rooms when we go places. They scare the crap out of their friends at school with all the information and knowledge that they have. I teach them the skills that I learn at work just to keep them safe. So I guess it's kind of a double-edged sword where you want to keep them safe, but you don't want to scare the crap out of them, which there's a fine line with that. Their father is a police detective also, so they were divorced. They have, kind of both sets of parents, both families, both houses. They're getting that constant information from us. When I went into this field, I kind of lived in a bubble. So the worst about the worst in your community. And so you're kind of always watching your back. You're always, oh gosh, that name sounds familiar. So you're very overprotective. I hear that a lot from my kids. You take the 20 questions to an extreme. Like, you want to know everything. You want to know everything about their friends. You want to know their friend's mom's name, and maybe if you could get their birth date or something like that. So,
all right. So there are good sides and bad sides coming together by being a family member of first responder. All right. So we have also Victor here, and there's life after the job, like when you retire. So how about that adjustment and transition from an extreme condition to something a little bit different? So what was your experience? And first of all, did you ask that question, like, how did you decide, like, okay, I'm done? And like, what would you say to your youngster, like, if you had a chance to talk with your, like, 30 years old, 25 years old, would you recommend him to be like having the same history, or what do you say?
For the most part, yes. My history, it was enjoyable, my career. I get asked often, when is it time to go? And I think when you start asking yourself, when is it time, is when it's time. I get asked that often. And that's the way it was for me. I started asking myself, is it time? And that's when I realized it was time for that change. My transition was night and day. So I retired on Friday and I started at United Township High School on Monday. So I didn't have any downtime really. So the adjustment came as I was working the new job. It was a very welcome change that I didn't really foresee. I went from 24/7 communications by email, text messages, answering for a department, being woke up in the middle of the night about things, and my phone never rang. And it was, at first it's very strange, but then it becomes very welcoming. And so the things that I do miss about the job are mostly the people. I mean, just like anybody else, you become an adrenaline junkie, and you have those exciting times and everything. But once that's gone, it's really the day in and day out communications with the people. All the first responders here talked about family. So it's just not the police part of it. It is the entire first responder family and the family from the city government I came from.
All right. Very good. Yeah. So finding something that keep you busy is a good transition plan, right? And at the same time, having the time is something fun, right?
Yeah, it's very enjoyable. You smile a lot more after you retire, definitely. But yes, most people that I talk to that retire, the ones who have the most difficult go from working one day to they're totally retired, and they find themselves within months just very bored and looking for something else to do.
I'm going to turn to audience if you guys have a question for our guests here. And again, it's like a talk for a day or week. We can ask hundreds of questions, but want to hear if you have any questions. All right. Yeah.
Who was your favorite employee over
Well, there was a tie, actually. One of them works here, because otherwise you'll stop not crying or start crying. Thomas G. Reagan and Darien Gold.
So that's another thing, kind of connecting all the dots. We mentioned starting from the beginning, family. It's a huge family. They work together. When I invite Heather said, I know Todd. We work together. He was my supervisor. So everyone knows each other. So they're supporting each other. So it's a good thing to have another family next to your original family. So, okay, thank you for being here. Do you guys want to share anything before we give some tips for the new generation, new students that have students, and recommendations?
Just make sure that it's definitely something you want to do. My idea of getting into this field was wanting to help people. And those people that are calling you don't necessarily want your help. They just want you to do something. You don't get the thank yous. You don't get there's a lot of negative. And to piggyback off of what he said, it's all in how you react to it, making it positive or negative. But that was one of the thoughts that went through my mind is I just want to help people. And when you get called every name in the book, you kind of go home and you reevaluate and wonder if this is still something that you want to do. So go into those agencies, and it's not only the people that you're talking to on the phone, but a big part of that is your coworkers. Make sure in our field as dispatchers, there's a lot of type A personalities. So I'm in charge, I'm in control, I'm in command, all of that in one room. I ideally can work alone for the entire county, so that's not so terrible. normally work with 2 people, so it's not as large as what Todd works with. But you just have to make sure that your personality can mesh with those people, because if you can't rely on your partner or you can't rely on the people that you work with, it makes your job that much harder.
All right. Thank you, Heather, for being here. Thank you for sharing your feelings and thoughts. And okay,
Thank you.
Same for Okay, so the next step and ending the event, so to say, is going to be the award ceremony. And what we did when we are organizing this event, we wanted to have a symbolic portion of it. It's not like selecting a couple incidents, couple event, a couple accidents and giving some awards. It's just like a representation of appreciation of the community to the people who serve us, and just giving an example of the sample incident to tell them this is what they do on a regular basis. And it's just not them, it's the whole team, all family, as you listen from them, are responding and doing, and they're all deserving that award. But we just want to remind people, showing one example, telling them this is what they do. Don't forget saying thank you. So this is something that we forget a lot, but this event and the officer appreciation effort is just that purposes. So I collected some nominations from the people, community. 77 nominations were submitted over the system. We eliminated a couple times, and then we were able to have 4 of them, and almost 90% of these submissions were deserving a type of award and recognitions. I have to say that. But again, for the sake of having this symbolic perception of the perspective of it, we just picked 4 of them, and after a couple audits, we have this First Responder Hero Award for Police Officer Andrew Lowler from Rock Island Police Department. He's not available at the moment, he's in training, but the sergeant from Rock Island Police Department will be here to receive the award.